on their way home at last.
Going home. Goodbye.
The second group of 13 Israeli hostages freed by Hamas after 50 days in captivity.
Wake up. Wake up.
Among them, little 9-year-old Emily Hand, whose father initially thought she had died before learning she'd been taken.
She must be saying every day, "Where's my daddy? Where is my daddy? Why hasn't he come to save me?"
Making their reunion all the sweeter. The hostage release delayed for several hours after Hamas accused Israel of violating the truce by blocking aid from reaching Northern Gaza, an accusation Israel denied.
It's a really tenuous truce and anything could go wrong at any time.
Among the first group of 13 Israelis released yesterday, 9-year-old Ohad Munda, who threw himself into the arms of his dad, and 4-year-old Raz Asher, with her little sister Aviv and mum Doron. "I dreamed we're going home," she tells her dad. "Now, the dream came true," he replies. There were emotional scenes too in the West Bank overnight. Crowds celebrating as a bus drove through the streets carrying Palestinian prisoners, women and children released by Israel in exchange. Some hoisted on the shoulders of marchers. 2 groups of 39 prisoners have been released as part of the 4-day pause in fighting. While in Gaza, residents are using the quiet to return to what's left of their homes after several weeks of relentless Israeli bombardment as more aid enters the Strip.
This pause, it just has to continue. I cannot believe that in 3 or 4 days' time we're just going to go back to mass civilian casualty.
But Israel is vowing to continue its campaign to destroy Hamas after the pause. These precious moments of relief, all too fleeting, as the clock ticks down to the end of the truce.
IDF spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner joins us now from Tel Aviv. Lieutenant Colonel, the IDF is speaking with each of the captives about their ordeal. What are they telling you?
So, of course, what is most important, first of all, is that we bring them home to their families, to their loved ones. We are trying to mitigate the huge stress that they've been under for the last 50 days now. And, of course, each of them has their own story. And, of course, we are utilizing whatever they can tell us in order to try and build a broader picture. One of the realities is a reality of extreme stress. Some of them said that they hadn't received food for 2 weeks. A dire situation, as we could expect from the hostage scenario.
When are the next group of hostages due to be handed over?
So it's every day to itself, I guess. Today we expect, and today is now Sunday morning here in Israel, we expect later today, probably around the same time, to begin at 4 p.m. But as happened yesterday, it was dragged out over 8 hours, where Hamas decided to create even more emotional stress to the families, to the country, as the country continues to hold its breath every evening, watching in sheer shock, basically, about what's happening.
You are exchanging Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails for these hostages. And obviously this is leading to questions about why Israel is holding so many Palestinians, women and children among them, in detention. Why are there so many kids, I think upwards of or around 200, in Israeli prisons?
So we need to, first of all, clarify, we're not talking about women and children in exchange for women and children. We're talking about convicted felons, criminals, or terrorists. These are people that have done or tried to do atrocious acts, even at the age of 16 or 15, tried to detonate a car bomb. So these aren't like in kind for in kind.
But are they all easily described in that way? I mean, I think there's a 14-year-old teenage boy who had thrown stones, he'd harmed a police officer. I think many people are trying to understand, why is someone like that in an Israeli prison?
I think we need to ask, why is someone like that throwing stones against the police force? And what is the culture that is creating it? That people are, even at a very young age, involved in extreme cases of violence. When a 12-year-old grabs a knife to stab Jews, what should you do with them? This is the failure of the education system, the Palestinian education system. It's a failure of society. It's a failure of parenting. And at the end of the day, Israel is left up with violent offenders that need to be dealt with. And the question is, how is it best to deal with them? And what are the alternatives?
All of the indications are that once this truce is over, once the hostages have been handed back to Israel, that the fighting is likely to resume. The British Foreign Secretary David Cameron has said that the civilian death toll is too high. The Palestinian authorities in Gaza suggest it's nearing 15,000. Do you acknowledge that the civilian death toll has been too high?
I would say that the civilian loss of life in this conflict is tragic. It's not something we aspire for. On the contrary, we do everything in our capability in the line of the laws of armed conflict to limit civilian casualties. That is precisely why we called for evacuation of densely populated areas. We've encouraged people to leave. We've sent text messages, millions of text messages, dropped leaflets.
But none of those actions, though, absolve you of your responsibilities to uphold international humanitarian law, though, do they?
Absolutely not. And we don't, in any way, we don't step away from that. Of course not. And I would say the reality on the ground is one where there is an ongoing conflict, a war. And it is a tragedy that the civilians are paying for the price of the failed leadership of Hamas that has intentionally put them in harm's way, where we are trying to get them out of harm's way. And I would expect that the war will continue when the pause is over. There is an easy way out of it, mind you. Here's a question perhaps that needs to be asked. If Sinwar, the mastermind of the massacre, and his henchmen unconditionally surrender and release all of the hostages, it can be over tomorrow. No more lives need to be spared. I mean, all of lives can be spared. We can move forward. Our role is to make sure that the terrorism that happened on the 7th of October, we're not at war because of the 7th of October. We're at war to make sure that the 7th of October never, ever happens again to us.
Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good day.